Welcome back, everyone. We are here at Las Vegas Summer League. No Trade Clause team will be up in the studio throughout Summer League, pushing out content, whether it be about the draft, free agency. A lot of stuff that we cover on our site we'll be tackling here. I'm joined by Aaron Washington, my fellow No Trade Clause teammate, along with Rafael Barlowe. Rafael is the Director of Scouting at NBA Big Board. He's the founder of NBA Draft Junkies, and we're super excited to have him here, take some time out of these games to chop it up with us about what it means to be at Summer League, the draft process, and, we're excited to get into it. Thanks for coming, Rafael.
Yeah, anytime. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Rafael and I go back a little to about last year. We met in a gym in Miami, watching some prospects, watching guys go through the draft process, and it's cool to kind of come full circle like this. Now we're towards the end of it, and we got to see some of the guys that we were watching in the gym. Now we're seeing them in actual NBA games, and it's an awesome opportunity to, as I said, come full circle and see these guys in an NBA uniform.
Yeah, it is. When you're like watching the pre-draft process, you're seeing the beginning stages. And then when you see them out here at Summer League, you can see some of the stuff they're working on. I like to pay attention to like the changes in their body. Like there's some guys that come into the pre-draft process, they're a little slim.
Yeah.
And then by the time you see them at the end, especially like in year 2, you see how much their body has developed. So I like seeing that part of the process.
Yeah, I mean, just being in an NBA facility for a few months can be a complete change. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. Guys who, I see them working out in a gym in the off-season. And sure, they have their strength and conditioning program, but being around NBA caliber trainers in an NBA gym and with NBA quality everything, it could do wonders for a player.
Yeah, because that's all they have to focus on. They're not going to class, and it's your job. So
exactly.
If you're not getting stronger, then you're not working.
Exactly.
Yep.
So I want to kind of keep it big picture here. So, a lot of people like to look at the nitty-gritty of a lot of these performances, look at the box score, and kind of pigeonhole guys from the jump. So I don't want to start by doing that. I want to keep it big picture and kind of tie a bow on this draft process, end of the draft cycle as a whole. So, reflecting back on the entirety of the process, dating back to, the end of the college season when guys are declaring or, going through a lot of those deadlines where you have to meet, along with the combine, the lottery, team workouts. There's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of hoops these prospects that just recently went through the draft, they have to jump through a lot of protocols.
Yeah.
And with that, the NBA likes to have their hands on every bit of it. What are some things about the process at any point along the way you really like, and then also some things you would wish to see done differently?
I can start off what I like to see done differently, and that is guys compete at the combine. So I was at the combine in Chicago, and I want to say like 46 of my top 60 players did not participate in games at the combine. I mean, it's strategic on the agent's part, but I would love to see guys actually play at the combine. And then even here at the Summer League, I think that there's some guys that are going into their second year. I would love to see them. Like, I love the fact that Josh Giddey's out there playing. There's some guys that I'm wondering, like, why do you feel like you did enough in your rookie season that you don't have to be here at Summer League? And so I think that Summer League is a opportunity for guys to grow and develop, and I just wish that there were more guys that were planning as far as second year. Then as far as just like rookies, the process I like hearing about is the strategy that goes on behind the scenes with the workouts. So, if you're an agent, you want your player to work out in teams, for teams that are the best fit, but then you have to strategize about, all right, if your player is training in, let's say, Dallas, you want him to have all his workouts on the West Coast around the same time. But let's say there's a team that you really think is a good fit. You want to make sure that that's not like his third workout in 4 days when he works out for that team. So I love the behind-the-scenes strategy behind the agents and the teams and trying to put their players in the best situation. But then I don't like the part of it is when they're holding the guys out at the combine.
Definitely. So. Now, back to the combine, do you think there can be sort of a happy medium between agents and, the teams wanting to see guys versus agents holding out? Or do you think that the NBA eventually would have to just step in and say, listen, if you want to be draft eligible, and if you're a prospect that teams want to see, you need to play.
Yeah.
Do you think it'll get to that point?
I mean, I don't know. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. The players aren't actually in the players' union yet, so I don't know if they can force them to participate at the time. I could be wrong about that. I don't know the happy medium. I just think it's strategic on the agent's part, and then it's almost like the less you've seen, the better. But then I look at Jalen Williams from Santa Clara. I thought coming into the combine he was late first round, early second round pick. And he played very well at the combine, and he ended up being a lottery pick. So, and then the year before was Bones Highland. So I do think that there are situations where you can help yourself at the combine. But then I look at this year, there were guys that I felt like they should have played, and they end up falling to like late second round. So I'm like, well, you could have put a little bit of extra money in your pocket if you went to the combine. And since most of the top guys aren't playing, I think would have given them a better opportunity to look good.
Is Caleb Houston declined his?
But I think it sounds like he had a guarantee anyway. But the name that comes to mind is J.D. Davison. I think he was the 53rd pick, right? And if most of the guys aren't participating at the combine and he does and he plays well, I think that helps him out. But if you're the 53rd pick and you go to a blue blood school like. Well, I don't know if you consider Alabama a blue blood school in basketball. But I wonder, is there more money staying in school on the NIL side as opposed to being a 53rd pick? Maybe he just wanted to be a pro, but he's someone that I thought really should have went to the combine and played.
Yeah, well, he's got a few reps in under his belt here so far at Summer League. He was playing today. So we'll see how JD develops. For me, it goes even before the combine. I tend to have an issue with the selection of the players. I think it's interesting because it is all on the team side, right? If I'm not mistaken, the teams are voting for who they want to see in the combine. And I think for a lot of the fringe prospects, there could be some weird strategy implemented where if you like a guy a lot and you think he's a diamond in the rough and you want to keep him in the rough, then you may not want to vote for him. So you could say, okay, there's a chance he may not be invited to the combine. Let me just go let me not vote for him. Then he won't be there. He won't be on anyone else's radar. And then when the time comes, I can work him out. I can give him a guarantee. The ball will be in my court as an executive.
Do you think that's what happened with Caleb Houston? To me, that's what it sounds like happened. Then when he was drafted by Orlando, I was like, oh, he went to Montverde. Montverde is in the Orlando area. So it's like, okay, maybe they seen enough of him and they said, well, you know what, the numbers at Michigan weren't great, but we know what he can do. And then he looked like he proved them right in the first game.
Well, did he receive an invitation? He just declined, or he didn't receive one?
I think he just declined everything. I don't even know if he worked out for anybody. It just sounds like he was
just chilling.
He had a comfortable floor.
Exactly. Yeah. So I had thought it'd be interesting. What if people like yourself, people like draft, like really, like just how media gets to vote on NBA awards? What if credible draft analysts got to vote on who participates in the combine? Do you think that could be a possible solution?
Yeah, I think that would be pretty cool. I don't know if the teams would like me having so much power.
I mean, do the teams like giving the media that power for incentives for awards?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about that, but I guess then how you determine credible media, So
it is a loaded question, but I think it's just an interesting piece.
But I mean that makes a lot of sense to me. It does.
It's nice to say when you get the keys to the car, but we'll see how it goes.
Obviously, you're very plugged into the draft community. You do a fair amount of work on that end, as evidenced by your Twitter. You're putting out quality content out there on the regular. I was just curious as to how you go about doing your research when it comes to draft time or near the draft, and you're trying to decide where you want to rank guys on your board personally, 1 through 60, honorable mentions, things like that. What are a few traits, skills that you kind of zero in on when you're doing draft prep, when you're looking at guys in college or maybe guys that are at Summer League here, you're watching guys, or are there certain characteristics that you really hone in on and say like, oh, well, I see that in this guy that's that leading up to the draft that could really translate to the next level? There's certain things you rank higher than other things, like intangibles. How do you feel about the way you go about your draft process and like what you're looking for in particular?
Honestly, I'm self-taught, so I didn't have the opportunity to like learn under somebody. And so it was I just kind of go by a feel. Like, I mean, I do have some blind spots. Like, there are some guys that I probably would miss out on. I go by production. So I just had this conversation with an agent friend earlier today, and he told me his blind spots are point guards that don't really, like, create. So he said he would have missed out on a Dyson Daniels or a Tyrese Halliburton. And I feel the same way because I like my point guard to be able to break the defense down.
A little more dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, a blind spot for me would be I understand, like, potential, but I value production. So, you know, if there's a guy that has an incredible high school resume and he doesn't play well in college, I don't care what he did in high school.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm going to go by what I see. So there were a couple guys this year, like, for example, Peyton Watson. He averaged like 3 points per game. I think it was like 32, 26, 68 shooting splits. So for me, I would have been like, I didn't see enough for him to be a first-round pick. I could be totally wrong. So I value production. Of course, you got the little things like positional size and NBA role. You know, if a guy is a shooter, I do think there's more value in shooters than scorers, if that makes sense. So, but yeah, positional size, NBA fit, role, and then like some of the intangibles, which some of the stuff you can't really see on film, but like if I'm going to scout a game in person, how the guy warms up. Does he interact with his teammates? Does he, you know, during timeouts, is he looking in the crowd? Is he, you know, is he the last one on the floor during warm-ups? Maybe he could be getting taped or something like that, but I just kind of pay attention to that. And then sometimes in warm-ups, and this is just when you're scouting live, you may see like a big, for example, like a Christian Coloco, who didn't make a single three, but you may have seen him knock down threes in like a warm-ups, and you see the touch, and you're like, okay, well, maybe he can extend his range.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about that because it seems like, I mean, there's no exact science when it comes down to breaking down film, right? I mean, everybody has their own process, their own way of just kind of dissecting what they see on film. So I was just curious the way you go about it because, like you said, you're self-taught. You know, you didn't go through a super specific program. Like we went through Sports Business Classroom, and they had a whole scouting course, and they, you know, teach us, you know, certain things to highlight and look at and bringing down film. So it's interesting to see your side of it and things that you pick up on. And I think maybe it gives you a unique perspective when looking at these prospects.
A lot of it is repetition. Like, I watch so much film that, you know, like, you would have saw like my first scouting report, you would have been like, okay. Like, I tell you what, one of my first scouting reports, and I'll admit it now, but I thought Alex Lynn was going to be a multi-time NBA All-Star.
Oh yeah, well I'm sure you're not the only one who thought that. He kind of fooled a lot of us.
So, but I mean, on one hand, you can't determine like what a guy is going to do once he gets into the NBA. I mean, sometimes, you know, you give a 19, 20-year-old $15 million guaranteed, their goal may just be to make it to the NBA.
Sure.
But one of the things I've learned is to trust my gut instincts. And so, and I'm sure there's been other guys that can relate, but there's been a guy that I'm like, I'm not as high on him as other people. And then sometimes, I used to let the consensus say, all right, maybe I missed out something. Okay, now I'm forcing myself to try to see what everybody else sees. And then I find out that I was right all along. And then there's times where I was just totally wrong. So, like, for me, the process starts as I'll watch the film and I'll just start taking down notes. And then sometimes I may have to scratch out what I wrote. Like, Tari Eason, for example, I remember saying, good athlete, not really explosive. Then he'll make a couple plays. I'm like, okay.
Let's run that back.
Yeah, let me scratch that out. So, but yeah, I just kind of have like I said, positional size, and then try to figure out how they would fit in an NBA system.
Sure, it makes sense. Now, I'm sure there's people listening to this, watching this podcast here that, you know, maybe they're saying to themselves, I'm interested in getting into that side of the NBA. I'm very interested in kind of doing what you did, you know, kind of starting starting a page on Twitter, you know, starting some kind of company or something like that. They want to get into scouting in some form or fashion. If you were to look at these people on camera, let's say they're like sitting right in front of you, you're teaching a class.
Yep, I want to do that one day, by the way.
Exactly, yeah. So, you know, if they're trying to learn from you, if they're trying to kind of get their foot in the door, you know, what are a few suggestions you would have for those people that want to get started and they're just not really sure how to do that. Maybe, just some tips for people that want to get into scouting or watching film. What are some things that you would kind of tell them to start to learn or to look out for in their journey?
So the only thing I can really say that I know is my way, which was content, and I think content is key. And to me, content is like your resume. And so I was the guy that used to apply for jobs on like NBA Teamworks or Teamwork
Online.
Yep, Man, I used to apply for all those jobs, and then I just realized that I'm never going to get a job, especially like the scouting job. A lot of those jobs when they're like facilities or, nothing related to the basketball operations side. So I figured the only way I can get in is just create content and use content as my resume. And so, like, if I apply online, my resume is only going to who's ever looking at them. But if I have content, you never know who it can reach, whether it's Twitter, whether it's a website, whether it's YouTube. And so I kind of did all of them. I did a YouTube channel. I did a website. And then I tweeted draft stuff. And then it really took off for me in 2020 when I started doing a podcast, and I just was dropping content every single day. I mean, it was COVID. There was nothing to do.
Sure.
And so I would suggest just content. Keep putting out content. And sometimes people will just see, what this guy may not see everything, but the work ethic. A team may say, if I can teach them this, I can't teach them the work ethic. And so that could be a way to get in. But my suggestion would be just content, believe in yourself. You probably won't make a penny. You're probably going to lose money, but just keep going because, it's kind of like a funnel. There's a bunch of people that want to get in, but people are eventually going to weed themselves out because it just takes so much time.
Exactly, and we're a product of that. We completely get what you're saying. We're kind of in a similar position. We're posting content like this on the daily, so definitely agree with you there. That's the great thing about our day and age here in this NBA world. There's not one way, one size fits all. There's different ways to get in and make your name known, and what you're doing is just a prime example of that. So really respect what you're doing, and I think it's fantastic.
And being in the gym, like my man here. I seen him in Miami last summer, right? And I'm trying to hold a conversation with him, but he's like. Because he's taking, I think you were taking stats on shots.
Shot charting.
Yeah, so being in the gym is important.
Right.
There are people that, they only want to do the film stuff, and it may work for them. But I think once you're in the gym, you meet different people, and there's things that you pick up by actually being in the gym as opposed to just watching film. So
100%.
That would be another suggestion I would have.
Love that.
Most definitely. I want to kind of flip gears, kind of get back on, Summer League being here and have a few more questions in that regard. It's clear that there are some teams organizationally that put a little more emphasis on these games and their development more than others. A lot of teams tend to pull from their G League guys, from their G League program, and then you see teams like that may have to scramble for a little bit, especially the two teams without G League programs, Phoenix, Portland.
Yep.
It must be super challenging for them because they have to take hodgepodge of players coming from all over. Some of the guys may not have even, good chunk of them, I should say, haven't even been in the system before, been in the organization. So how often are you referring back to your notes from when these guys were prospects? Maybe not even from this past class, but players from classes before when they're coming into new organizations and trying to figure their way out. Because, I imagine the sets that they're running and the schemes are pretty basic, just so you can kind of. It's kind of like a grab and go system of these are the few sets we're gonna run and basic principles. So how often are you referring back to your draft notes from this class or previous classes when you're watching guys out here?
I do it a lot. For example, Balmero, right? Mm-hmm. So I scouted him heavily when he was in Barcelona, and then he didn't get a lot of time in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And then watching him today with Utah, saw that he was kind of running the point a little bit from the time I saw. So, I kind of have to, refresh myself from 2 years ago and just to see, if there's some improvements or, some of the weaknesses that I may have had written down, see if those areas have, like I said, made some improvements. But, yeah, you kind of have to go back to your notes, sometimes just to remember, because some guys went overseas. There are guys that just didn't get opportunities to play. But summer league just kind of gives you an opportunity to, one, see like how accurate you were on your notes 2 years, 2 or 3 years prior, and then just see if guys have made improvements.
Do you tend to then add to that based on what you see out here, or do you, just take a mental note, push it down, and, start evaluating these guys more as pros versus prospects?
Honestly, after the draft, I'm done. I'm on to the I'm on to the next class. I mean, so for me, it's just more so like, I'll look at my notes and I'll say, okay, yeah, I was right about this, I was wrong about this, but I'm not really like adding on to the notes. It's just more so like a checklist for me.
Yeah, checks and balances, seeing what hit and what didn't. But
yeah, I mean, I just, this field is kind of competitive in a sense, and so after after the draft, I'm already trying to figure out 23.
Yeah.
And then I spent a lot of time overseas, so I was watching like guys that I think are going to be in the 24 and 25 draft. So. Yeah, I'm not adding on anything to my notes after the draft.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people in the draft space to hold each other accountable, but also hold yourself accountable based on, your opinions and what you've put out there. Us at No Trade Clause, we tried to do we call it a draft pick'em, where we created a spreadsheet, where you'd put in your first round, and then it would spit out a score for you based on what the actual draft results were.
Which is crazy because, I mean, if you saw, just off the top of my head, David Roddy, Patrick Baldwin Jr., Peyton Watson. I mean, the draft is so unpredictable.
Yeah.
And it makes you question, like, man, my big board was off.
I know. I mean, I'll be the first one to say my score on that was not good.
Really?
Not good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think our winner had 8 of the first 10 right. Obviously, the top 2 being incorrect.
I had Paolo number 1.
There you go.
All year long.
Yes,
well, I had number 1 on my big board. I didn't think that he would be drafted number 1.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then I believe he had, then it was 17 out of 30 correct.
Wow.
So I forget who the name of the person who won, but if you're watching this, congratulations again. You could go back onto our Twitter feed. We shouted that individual out.
He needs to come here to Vegas.
Yes, come to Vegas.
Make some money there.
Exactly. Yep. So then I got one more question here for you. So, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show, a lot of people, a lot of fans here love to just put these performances under a microscope, taking really in-depth looks at box scores and just coming to some crazy conclusions about them. Obviously we saw a lot of Chet Holmgren clips in the first. Not to say that they were crazy conclusions, but, Chet Holmgren versus Kenny Lofton, a lot of those clips, and 2 very different players going at it. But as an outsider looking in, essentially people working in basketball away from the team side, so an agent, scout, media, when we're making these evaluations based on games we watch here, what are some things we should be looking at away from the box score, and how do we manage expectations this time of year, and what kind of how can we remove our biases from, like where the guy went to school and, how they performed in college, starting a clean slate, I guess, for them as pros?
That's tough because sometimes I don't think like there is a real clean slate. Like if there's a guy that was a top 5 pick and he gets outplayed by his teammate that was a second-round pick, the top 5 pick is still going to get, the better opportunity. But it's just key not to overreact. I remember, one of the most famous ones, Kevin Knox, 2018.
Oh, yeah.
Thought he was going to be a great player for the Knicks. And maybe he still can be. It's just, he's on his 3rd team. And I remember thinking, like, Trae Young struggled. And I thought, okay, well, you know what? He's not going to get the same freedom he had at Oklahoma. Is he going to be the same player without the same freedom? So it's natural to overreact, but I mean, at the end of the day, what's the saying? Like, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But sometimes I think it's Summer League.
It should go beyond gambling, right?
Yeah. But what happens in Vegas doesn't always stay in Vegas in Summer League. But the thing about Summer League that is interesting as far as like with the media and the overreactions, like if you really like a guy and he does well, then you're like, I knew it. And if there's a guy that you don't necessarily, or you're not as high on, you're going to point out every little flaw in a sense. So, like, if you are a guy that questioned, can Chet defend stronger guys, you're going to love those Kenny Lofton clips.
Yeah.
If you are someone that felt like, well, yeah, even though he's skinny, he can still make an impact, you're going to show the block that he had against Kofi Coburn when he was giving up 100 pounds. So I think either way you look at it with Summer League, you're going to point out the positives, even if a guy didn't have a great performance. So I think people are going to be biased, but people are going to quite naturally overreact, especially after the first game. And I mean, we've seen guys that didn't have really good summer leagues that are better with more structure, because summer league is kind of
all over the place a little bit.
It's all over the place. You got, especially if you're big in a sense, like you may not have like the NBA starting point guard that's going to hit you as a vertical lopper or the roll man. So you may not look as good in summer league situations. So that's one of the reasons why I try not to overreact.
Yeah, we see a lot of small, quick guards excel in this environment, right?
Yeah.
That don't necessarily get it done at the next
lot
stage.
Of like combo guards,
Yeah.
guys that were big scorers in college. They're supposed to try to show if they can play the point guard and run a team, but in this setting, you're like, it's a tryout in a sense. So you're going back to like doing what you do best.
Yeah, let's hope guys like Kennedy and Ty can figure it out here to get it.
Ty's been playing good.
Yeah,
He's played better than. I mean, I've only seen one game and a half of another game, but he's been really impressive.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I've always thought he's been a great facilitator, and I think he slipped a little bit, in my opinion, from where he actually went. But
yeah, I mean, Kentucky guards, they have a track record of outplaying their draft position, and he could be the next one, whether it's Hero, Maxey. I mean, they have a pretty good track record of that, so he could be next.
Definitely.
And I think he went to I thought if there was a team that I thought was the best fit for him, I thought Houston. He doesn't have to be the engine.
Yeah.
Houston, he can knock down open shots, so I think he's played well, and I think he's in a good situation.
Definitely. Well, that about wraps it up for us. We are going to be continuing to shoot content here out at our studio here outside Section 101. You know, if you're here in Vegas, please feel free to stop by. We love talking to our listeners, our viewers, and people who enjoy our website. We're continuing to update everything on the site as things happen. All of our cap sheets are up to date. All of our draft capital is up to date. We also are going to start pushing out more scouting content. You know, our previous pods with myself and Dan, that's just the beginning. For this upcoming class, we're hitting it hard, and we're going to be sure to cover it well and get you guys the quality of content you expect, just as on par with our cap sheets and our other front office work. So be sure to be tapped in on that. Make sure to say hello if you're out here in Vegas. Thank you to my guests, Aaron, my fellow co-host, and Rafael, our guest here.
Thanks for having me on. If you need me on tomorrow, let me know. I'm here.
We'll run it back.
Run it back.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again, and stay safe, everyone.